Georgia's last game with Kentucky and the last home game for the Bulldogs. Excuse me. The last game at home for Garrison Smith, Aaron Murray, Artie Lynch, Chris Burnett, Dallas Lee, guys who have really played for a long time at Georgia. Some of them were not highly ranked recruits coming out, but have played pretty well for Georgia. And they will get their chance to play in Athens for the last time. And it's definitely been a long year at Georgia. Anytime you lose some of these games the way Georgia's lost them, it makes for a tough end of the season. Tough during the season too, actually. But anytime you're a football program in a 9-win season, what could be a 9-win season is considered a long year. That's one indication of where a team is at or a program is at. You get straight to the questions. Actually, let me talk first about the Auburn. Georgia lost to Auburn. Kind of an inexplicable ending to that game, with the Bulldogs losing on it wasn't a last-second play, but a play for the ages, for sure. A play that Georgia and Auburn fans won't soon forget. Some remembering it fondly, and some certainly not as much. But that was crazy. I was on the sideline for that play, and I've talked about this already in Legge's thoughts from after the game. But it was one of those things that you just expect guys to make that play, and make that play means either knock the ball on the ground or just make sure the other guy doesn't have a touchdown. I mean, even tackling right there, Georgia could have had 3 timeouts and Auburn only kick a field goal, and then Georgia could have come down the field and maybe won it that way. Obviously, they were in football position at the end of the game, being on the 20-yard line. Inexplicable, and then suddenly all the blame shifted to Todd Grantham, whose guys didn't knock it down at the end of the play or at the end of the game, and appropriately or inappropriately, a couple of guys who are very young back there, one of them a true freshman in his 10th college football game, Trey Matthews, and the other one, Josh Harvey Clements, who's in his first year of starting. Ball tipped up a little bit in the air, and the Auburn kid came through, ran through, made a play. Great play for Auburn. One of those plays at Georgia they'll never forget. A lot of Georgia people big plays at Georgia are always plays that always have gone Georgia's way. This is a big play that Georgia people will not soon forget because of the way Auburn won the game, and because Georgia should have won the game. I mean, it's just that simple. They played awful, and they had a great comeback to come back and try and win the game, but I don't know. Let's get straight into the questions. Waits or Watts 24? I think it's Waits 24. Do you have any insight into Brendan Langley's position with the team? The way I understand, he still plays cornerback. There are a lot of rumors flying around about his work ethic being in the doghouse or possibly transferring at the end of the season. I don't think he's working as hard as he did. He's kind of tuned out a little bit versus when he was starting. That's what I've been told by some people who would know. I think that's a little bit natural, considering that he's not playing hardly any, and Damian Swan, who did not know as much as he should have known coming into the season, and therefore was not the starter. Langley, after getting kind of beat out by Shaq, has really gone from starting 4 games to not playing at all. And, maybe that's part of the learning process for Grantham with these younger kids, is who can do it in the game when the bullets are flying. Brendan Langley got picked on pretty good by South Carolina. And, but other than that, I thought Langley was not horrible, except in that South Carolina game. He got beat up pretty good then. But I think it's tough for young kids who are 18 years old to understand how things are supposed to work immediately. Is he in the doghouse? I don't know that. Is he going to possibly transfer? That'd be pretty immature, I think. Most guys don't play at all their freshman year. He started 4 games. I understand how people get upset by starting and then not playing very much, but the career, Demario Mentor had a similar path. He played a fair amount and then lost his position. He wound up with a great career at Georgia. I mean, a great career, him and Tim Jennings. So at the beginning of your, freshman year, you play a bunch of games, and maybe you play some, more as a sophomore, and then you start as a junior and senior. Now that's more than most college players doing. Here's a question about Sheldon Dawson transferring. I don't know. Look, if guys aren't happy and they want to leave. That's where I'm at with it. Those two guys are not starting. That doesn't mean they're not going to start in the future. It doesn't mean they don't contribute right now. I mean, Sheldon Dawson's had an okay season on special teams for sure. But they're very comfortable with Swan and Shaq at corner, and Georgia's played better with those guys starting. I mean, they've still gotten beaten up pretty much back there, but they played better than they did at the beginning of the season. Now, some of that's because the teams that they're playing are not as good, but that, I think those two guys will start next year as well. So if guys are unhappy, that happens. People transfer. I have not been told those guys are going to transfer, and I don't expect them to, but we'll see. Swanee Dog, when will our defensive coaches learn to rotate players so that we can have more experience? Right now, they don't need more. They need the guys on the field need more experience. So that's a question for 2012. I realize we had a lot of talent last year, but we had opportunities to play our bench to prepare for this season. Have the defensive coaches dumbed down the system so new players can play without thinking so much? Not that I'm aware of. I think that's kind of my thing. Is that I wonder is it too complicated? Is the scheme a little bit too advanced for guys that are as young as some of these guys on secondary? I mean, I'm sitting here watching a replay of Georgia's game with South Carolina right this second, and you just look at this group, and they're very young. I mean, who are you going to rotate Leonard Floyd out with? With DeLoach? I mean, it's another young guy. So, and here's Connor Norman playing safety in this South Carolina game. It's been one of those years at Georgia where, they don't need, the backups don't need more experience. The guys on the field need more experience. It's pretty simple. J.M. Tulldog asks, Georgia will lose Chris Burnett, Dallas Lee, Canarius Gates to graduation after this season. I'm concerned about Georgia's returning depth and the talent offensive line in 2014, most notably at offensive tackle. Can you tell us about Zach DeBell, Greg Pike, Hunter Long, Xavier Ward, and Alden Bynum? Are you optimistic that any of these players could emerge to provide quality depth? Okay, I think Greg Pike could play some guard for Georgia. Maybe could be a starter next year, maybe not. I mean, I think we know Andrews is going to start, and I think the starters on the outside are going to be Beard at one tackle, and if he's not doing tackle, he'll start somewhere else, maybe at guard. I think Theus will start. I think Colton Houston, who did not know he was going to play until it was way too late, and the train had already left the tracks for this season in terms of physically getting ready for the season. I think those guys will start. The question is, will Cublano start? Will Pike start? Will Hunter Long start? These are guys that will probably start at guard. Georgia's not going to be super great at tackle. That's why you go and try to get Laramie Tunzel, etc. And but tackles are hard to grab. I mean, that's why there's so much competition, if you want to call it that, to get tackles in the SEC. Further question, he's asking about could they provide depth. I don't know. Two of these guys, a couple of these guys have been in the system for a while. I think we should let Alden Bynum kind of develop and see where he's at. He's going to be, he looks like he's going to be a tackle, probably a right tackle, not necessarily a left. Dyshawn Sims, who's committed to Georgia, he certainly looks like a left tackle more to me, but he's playing at Lowndes, and they're running the ball the whole time, so it's going to take him some time too. It's just, it takes guys time. I mean, nobody wants to hear that on the defensive side of the ball, but I mean, it makes sense. If you've never played before, we can't really expect Alden Bynum to come in and play a lot, or at least if he plays a lot, to play really well a lot of the time. And that's something that, where will Alden Bynum be not March of this year, but March of 2015? That's the question. It's not, is he ready right now? Of course not. And I don't think, I think you got what you got. You've got David Andrews at center for sure, 100%. Then you've got, on the outside, you've got Theus, Beard, and Colton Houston. One of those three guys is going to slide inside. Probably, I would imagine if the two tackles play the way that you'd like them to play, then maybe you put Theus at right guard. Then you got to figure out who your left guard is. Okay, that's it. They're going to go with those guys. Dowsley is basically is a road grader. That's what he does. Gates has played he's played pretty well at left tackle. It's not been unbelievable. It's been pretty good though. And Chris Burnett has been pretty good. So these guys, this offensive line at Georgia got them 4 yards from winning the national championship. Those guys were not heralded recruits. So it shows that you can develop. If there's one spot you can develop, it's the offensive line, because they're only playing in a small portion of the field. You're not running routes. You're not doing this. You can develop yourself for sure in that little box, because you're only playing, typically in each play, you're playing a 5-yard area. Your footwork matters a lot, but you may only take 7 steps on a play, and that's it. Your kickback, or that's a spot you can really develop. And Wilfred's done I think he's done a really good job with that group. And you don't have to be rocket scientists to play on the offensive line, or rocket surgeons, as people used to say. It's really funny, rocket surgeons. But what you do have to, whatever you're doing, you got to go get it. And those guys over the last, 3 years, really, but certainly the last 2, they have really gone and gotten it. And it's similar to that 07 offensive line. Now this group got beat up by Clemson the first game of the season, but they still scored 35 points. So they didn't do too much wrong in general. I think the offensive line has been pretty good since Will Friend has gotten here. What is the key to playing a good game against Kentucky? Also, how do you see Georgia's defensive line matching up against their offensive line? Look, I don't know a lot about Kentucky. I know one thing. They're not very good. So what is the key to playing a good game? You'd like to see the defense force 2 turnovers. I think they had 2 turnovers in one game only once. That's the Vanderbilt game. They lost that game, not because of the defense, because of special teams. I think they need to play a game that is clean from the standpoint of turnovers, no interceptions for touchdowns. If Georgia doesn't have 4 or 5 turnovers in this game, they should win. And at this point, it's just about getting the 9 wins, getting them as many wins as you can. Now, obviously, Kentucky's beaten Georgia once before on Senior Day. Georgia only lost, I think, 2 Senior Days in the Mark Richt era. One Kentucky and the other one Georgia Tech in 08. So 08, 09, 09 Kentucky, 08 Tech. So those 2 games, those were tough. But they've won out from that point forward on these final games of the year. So I expect them to play well. How do I expect the Georgia defensive line to match up with the Kentucky defensive line? I expect Georgia defensive line to win. I don't know how much. Kentucky should not be able to really run a ton on them. Oh boy. Watch 24. What's the deal with the lack of holding calls? You gotta ask me that question, man. You want me to get started for 30 minutes here? It's really annoying. I don't really know how to talk about that. That's rough. Looking forward to 2014. Who will be the defensive leaders for the offensive team with Garrison Smith moving to the NFL? Well, I think it's going to be Herrera and it should be Swan, Herrera, and probably Jordan Jenkins. Those guys will all be either seniors or juniors at that point. 2 of those guys would be seniors. Obviously, Jordan at that stage would be a junior. That's who you think. But, Shaq Wiggins is, I don't know if he's a leader or not, but he definitely gets after it on the field, and you can notice that. So he's going to be one of those guys. Who will the coaches look to for locker room leadership amongst returning players? To me, it's a Marlowe on the defensive side of the ball. And on the offensive side of the ball, it's David Andrews. And Todd and Bennett and Malcolm. And, they're returning a lot of guys in that offense. Justin Scott Wesley. Who do I see playing left tackle next year? I think it's probably It's gonna be one of those. It's not gonna be. I don't think it's gonna be John Theus. I think he'll probably play right tackle or right guard. I think it's probably going to be my guess right this second is Colton Houston, but it could be Beard. So, but those three are going to form the tackle nucleus of this team. Also, how do you think Mason's height will negate really deep drops that Murray takes, therefore making it easier for him to run, form a pocket around him? That's a good question. I mean, Mason's certainly taller than Aaron. I mean, I seem to remember David Green taking some pretty deep drops, so I don't know that that's necessarily a huge thing. I don't know the answer to that. Okay, Dean Legge Show, a little bit late this week, but Georgia and Kentucky on Saturday for Georgia to wrap up what they hope to be another decent campaign in the SEC, a 5-3 season. They only lost 2 SEC games the last 2 years in the regular season, lose 3 this year, so a little bit disappointing for Georgia, but certainly the thing about Georgia's never supposed to have a rebuilding year, not according to its fans, and a lot of times never according to the media. When you have this much excitement and intensity around a program, they're never supposed to have a rebuilding season. So Georgia looking backwards, certainly was a rebuilding season with some of these injuries, and certainly the youth on the defense has just been tough to deal with. So from this point forward, Dean Legge Show, we'll be checking in before the Tech game. Check us out.